my name is Nicolas Pinot, and I'm an investigative health journalist specialized in electromagnetic fields, EMFs, and I'm also the author of the Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs, which you can find at emfbook.com, and also the host of a course called Electrosmog RX, that's for health practitioners who want to learn about EMFs, and you can find it at electrosmogrx.com. Today, I'm back with another groundbreaking exclusive interview, and it will be a very special one. I'll tell you that, folks. A lot of people feel that talking about how cell phone, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi radiation might harm us is a kind of doom and gloom topic. It's not something people want to look at, and it's definitely not something that makes everyone merry when you talk about it in a family dinner. So a lot of people think that there's no hope when it comes to EMFs, and I'm not one of these pessimists, and I believe that we can create safer technologies once we acknowledge that there's a problem and that the current technology is unsafe. And once we ask very intelligent people, way smarter than me, engineers, biologists, and amazing thinkers, to create wireless communications that are more biologically compatible with our body. And today's interview is all about how we could technically make our wireless technologies way safer and what makes current wireless technology so disruptive to the human body, which is bioelectrical in nature. We have voltage throughout our body and we pick up signals. And today for discussion, I have someone called Pawel Wypychowski, who's an electrical engineer and an EMF powerhouse. Thanks for being here, Pawel. Are you back in Poland now?
Yes, I'm back in Poland. Thanks, Nick.
Well, thanks for being here. And we met a few short weeks back when I did a keynote presentation at an event called Nourish Vermont in Vermont, USA. And it was very weird the way we met each other, to be quite honest. I had mentioned in my presentation in front of the crowd that in the city of Krakow, Poland, the mayor was elected last year because he promised to get cell phone towers out of the city. And I was blown away when I heard that myself, because I'm like, oh, well, in America, most people think it's completely tinfoil. It's nonsense, the EMF thing. But in Krakow, it looks like there's quite a few people that know about it. So, well, thanks for being here. And can you let us know what the story is? What's your educational background, professional background, and how did you end up participating in this activism in the city of Krakow and of all topics looking at electromagnetic fields?
Okay, I try to make it short because it's
the short version.
Actually, a long years. My background is actually in electronics and telecommunication. I have a master's degree in electronics and telecommunication, and actually, my interest in EMF started really in about 2007 and 2008. When I was really sick with a debilitating illness and I couldn't find really any medical solution to that. Mm-hmm. And then I started to looking into, I was already at that time a CEO of a Norwegian investment fund doing a lot of things in let's say, big business. And actually I went down very, very deep with my health, and before that I was just a technology freak. I was using everything what was just introduced to the market. I was very good in it, and I was using all the wireless devices which were there available for me. So a lot of mobile phones which were actually introduced to the European market even earlier than in US, to the scale of things. And after some time in my illness, when I couldn't really find a good answers for what is going on with me, and it was many symptoms from a lot of autoimmune conditions and Lyme disease, and really not very well defined, because it was symptoms from very different illnesses like Sjögren's syndrome, like systemic lupus, like some of the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, some of the Lyme, all overlapping. And I was looking for solutions for me because I was not able to be helped by doctors. So after about 20 of them, some very well known here in Europe, and something I really didn't have any answer which satisfied me, and I couldn't improve. So I started to study herbalism, all natural therapies, but also phototherapy, light therapy, and other things. And it was a very intense course in all those, but also biophysics. And then something started to connect for me, and I started very early doing measurements because I had a background in electronics, so it was not really very difficult for me to first of all understand the connection and then to start doing things. And then my eyes just turned like this, like big eyeballs, when I realized what is actually the real connection between them. And then this was like 2008, I would say 2008, beginning of 2009. And then I started a then very small activity as a company, which is today called EMFbusters.pl, and started to dig deeper into the subject. And about 2010, I moved from Szczecin, which is northwest of Poland, to Krakow, actually, because partly because of personal reasons, but also because I started to work with some people there, which were experiencing some problems. They lost a child, unborn child, and they had problems with the 3 base stations actually around the house. Not very far from that, and they couldn't find any explanation. They found me over the internet, and then we start talking, and then I established with them, after about 2 or 3 years, I established with them an Institute of Electromagnetic Studies in Krakow. And then it was a lot of work actually done before we were really able to talk with the city about that, and we did a lot of work. This work is continued now by my coworkers. I moved out from Krakow about 2.5 years ago, so I have now a little bit loose connection with what they are doing. That there is a special unit established in the City Hall of Krakow, which is dealing with the electromagnetic radiation. They lease the EMF monitors to the citizens if they require. This is free of charge, and they measure different stuff. But for now, this is a little bit unfortunate, but this is only to the extent if the radiation from the base stations and other things is above the let's say legal Polish limits. And but a lot of education actually took place, so I think that the people consciousness about it is much higher. I also represented say the community of Krakow, but also other people from the whole Poland in the let's call it conference, but it was actually a number of meetings with the Polish network operators. It was organized by the Ministry of Telecommunication in Poland, and we were trying to find kind of a mutual understanding and solution about the let's say threats of the communication and also business interest, to find some ways of dealing with that, especially in relation to the new builded mobile stations and so forth. I would say it was probably not very successful, but still I think the discussion is first it was open, and at least it was a ground when we can meet and discuss those things and argue what can be done, and also propose some solutions which can be implemented. To that point, I think it's still nothing really very important was introduced into the legal side. So it's still a kind of a fight, I would say, but at least we are talking, at least we are discussing things, and at least the consciousness of that is growing. So so that's the good thing, I think.
I totally agree. Yes, at least being in communication with industry is so important. At least having some sort of dialogue. I feel like this is, in some way, this is like war, and you have diplomats between the industry who wants to continue business as usual because it's great business, and government who's torn between pushing the industry because it makes them money, and acknowledging that some citizens are concerned, and then citizens that are completely confused as who to believe, and is it dangerous, and is it not, and they only care about the health of their family in reality. So it's a very bizarre state.
Yeah, it is bizarre, and we also have to take into account that this is business, so they are paid for doing the business, for making profits. Okay, so we should not expect them to accept proposals which are only limiting them in doing business, because this will be refused.
Yeah, they want proposals that will make them more money. Yeah, they would love it.
And this was actually my way of not only thinking but proposing to them. And my idea was. Just a few words on it. My idea was to build for them the picture when if there is a network operator who is going to accept the thing that we can change something in the direction of wireless being more safe, not actually completely safe, but only to go into that direction, then this offer would probably be on the market, would probably be met with the interest of at least a part of people, and it would build a competitive edge for this company.
I totally agree.
This was actually because they are now battling very, very much on prices, and prices are very low, and they do not have a competitive advantage between the companies and something, all those prices for telecommunication are now flat rates for everything, and just at the same level. It's just a question of this or that promotion or other things. So they actually look for some competitive edge in that, and I was proposing that it might be actually a health factor. Okay, so making it safer, make it the investment in the new erecting new mobile base station, in taking into the dialogue with the local communities, and actually it happened in France. If you look then now Orange, for example, which is also a very strong network operator in Poland. Actually, Orange admitted that they have now introduced the plan when they try to erect a new mobile base station, they have to now get a permit from the local community. So first, the action starts with the discussion with the local community, if they really want it. If not, what would be the best location and something like that. And if they, in France, it's now like if they do not get the permit of the local community, they cannot do it.
And is it mandatory, or is that something
that
it's
Orange? Mandatory now in France. Yeah,
but for all operators.
Yeah, so it's completely different than for example in US, as far as I know, and also to the extent in other countries. So here in Poland, for example, we have a kind of solution that Orange already knows that this this is a situation in France, and it's going to be a similar situation probably in Poland and other European countries in a short years. So in a way, they could introduce at least part of that process in other countries, but it actually turns out that they are doing otherwise. So they are trying to exploit that is not existent in other countries and actually work faster to build more now.
Well, it's easier. It's less politics.
Easier,
They can,
it's easier, less time consuming, so it means more money.
Exactly.
That's it.
This is great. This is a great discussion on the political side. I want to move to the body side and really what the bulk of your work is, and what a couple of things that you mentioned to me. We spoke for a few seconds in Vermont, and I was like, okay, we need to talk for a good discussion. And the first thing that you shared with me is a presentation that you did, and it's a PDF of a presentation that you did, and it talks about the different kinds of natural EMFs that the body requires, right? Can we start a discussion by that? Because some viewers listening to that haven't realized that our bodies actually hear or let's say look at the different frequencies that are natural to the planet Earth, and if you remove these frequencies, you create disease, and that's something that's scientifically established. Can you comment on that?
Sure. Look, we have actually a very broad evidence of that basic fact of evolution. We, as a species, we evolved under the natural EMFs, okay, and including light, because people usually treat light as something different than EMF. It's EMF, okay. Yes. So, including light, and those natural fields are, except light, which is quite strong, but except light, they are very tiny, but very important. And just to point out to a few of them. First, we have the magnetic field of the Earth, okay, which is quite strong, but it's magnetostatic field, so it's static. But this field is it's crucial for the life of Earth because it's actually protecting us from the solar wind, from the sun. And without it, life was never happened actually on planet Earth. And this interaction actually, which is solar wind from one side and the magnetic field here, causes this magnetic field to deform. So it is quite an important thing that the magnetic field on the side of the Earth, which is day side, which is facing the sun, is quite different. Spatially, it's quite different than the magnetic field on the other side. And our body senses that. This is one of the mechanisms of doing a distinction between the night and day.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the changes,
The circadian rhythm, it's part of the circadian rhythm.
Yeah, it's part of the circadian rhythm, and it's not only light. It's light is the other part, but it's also this, and this is not only on-off scenario that you have this magnetic flux change, but it's also its spatial configuration is different. Okay, and we also sense that. Okay, this is just a magnetostatic field, but we have to consider that in a context, because it's ever changing, and it's changing actually in a way how the Earth turns around the sun. Okay, so and it was for 1 billion years. So we are connected to that, and we need it to drive the processes if in our organism, in our body. This is the one thing. The second thing is so-called Schumann Resonance. Probably a lot of people heard about that. It's a electromagnetic field, low frequency electromagnetic field, which is actually caused by the thunderstorms around the world and the cavity between the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere. And this electric field, it's this electromagnetic really, it's also crucial for our circadian rhythm regulation and all other processes. So I think it's enough to say that this main frequency, which is 7.83 hertz, around 8 hertz, is actually the main frequency of the human brain. So we tune to it, and not only human, by the way, but all creatures with the advanced nervous system. So we are not talking about the humans. We are talking about animals we eat and all the life around us, really. And there are really quite a lot of studies. What is happening with us when we are disconnected from this Schumann resonance field. Part of it is from NASA and Russian astronauts going on orbit and being without the Schumann resonance, because then they are above the ionosphere, so they do not have any connection to this field. And it turns out that it's slowly but surely degenerates our organism. The first signs are psychological, but also vision degeneration, and in the long run it's also osteoporosis, so losing the bone. And it's more important, this Schumann resonance disconnection is more important than being without gravity, okay, for that processes. So this is quite crucial, and what is very important for our discussion for wireless communication is that the basic pulsing of because these are the digital signals now, and they are pulsed in a certain way. I may do a little bit more explanation to that, but they are pulsed with the frequency. For example, Wi-Fi is pulsed with the frequency of 10 hertz. Okay, so it basically means you have 8 hertz and 10 hertz in your body now, which is 10 is quite artificial, and it's many times, actually even million times stronger than the Schumann resonance field.
Can I interrupt you for a second, just so I understand, because I'm not sure I get it. It's let's say a Wi-Fi is at 2.4 gigahertz, which is 2.4 billion hertz. This is the frequency, the carrier wave. This is the wave, and then you add information on the wave. I always imagine like a train, and then you put information packets in there.
Yes.
But at the same time, the train appears and disappears 10 times a second. So a pulsing of 10 hertz. Is that the case?
If you want to transfer any information on the wave, which is 2.4 gigahertz, for that example, okay, you have to modulate this, right? And to modulate, we are now using very complex in electronics engineering, very complex scheme for modulation, because we are trying to put as much data into this as possible, because we are now all using smartphones, and we want to see the full HD movie on the smartphone or something. So we need more and more, these clients need more and more data through output through the wireless devices. So these are very complicated schemes. I am not going to now to go into the details of that, but the basic thing is that if you have the transmitter and receiver, before they can transmit any data, they need to synchronize time between them. Okay, so to do this, you have to transmit the clock signal. Okay. Let's say it's called a frame signal, so which means actually in between you put the data, but you have to transmit the clock signal to synchronize the receiver with transmitter, so the receiver can really recognize and decode the signal. And actually, it's for unknown reasons, but I can give some explanation to that. Those clock signals, actually, for example, in Wi-Fi, was chosen at 10 hertz.
Okay, so 10 times a second. 10 times a second,
and
you have an
so
update.
you have really 2.4 gigahertz signal, but it's pulsed in a way in a frequency of 10 hertz. Okay, and the other fact which is very important is that from many studies we have established that we have a lot of semiconduction in our body. This is a very well-known thing from the study of bioelectronics, and also from, for example, from Roberto Becker book Body Electric. So we have nonlinear junction, nonlinear electronic elements in our body. So if you put the modulated 2.4 gigahertz wave and on the nonlinear element, so this is the basic fact of electronics, then on this element the signal is demodulated. So what we get, what our body gets, is actually demodulated signal of 10 hertz.
Gotcha. Okay. So the body interprets the 2.4 gigahertz as 10 hertz, and then the brain is out of tune. It should be around 7.83, and this is I think this is rich in alpha waves.
Yeah.
Okay.
This actually, it's another fact which is also very well known in electronics, is that if you have the one generator, which is now Schumann Resonance, okay, in the environment, very weak one, and the other one with close frequency, which is much more powerful, like this 10 hertz signal from wireless devices, then what is happening is actually frequency pooling. This is called in electronics. So the weaker generator is actually changing its frequency towards the stronger one. So what is going on? Actually, your alpha waves are not alpha waves anymore, natural. They are pulled to the 10 hertz frequency. So you are detuned. You are detuning your brain, okay, constantly. This is the one fact. The other fact of electronics is that if you put two frequencies close to each other, but not necessarily close, but two frequencies on the nonlinear element, they are mixed. This is called mixing of frequencies. And the product of mixing is not only the one frequency and the other frequency, but also the sum of the frequencies and the difference between the frequencies. So now your brain has, instead of one natural Schumann resonance frequency, has four frequencies very close to each other, and all those frequencies are in the bandwidth of our brain, actually, because they are all in the bandwidth of Schumann resonance wave. Because the Schumann resonance is not only 8 hertz, there are also different smaller signals. So actually the bandwidth is between 4 hertz and 60 hertz. So all those byproducts of mixing between those two frequencies are in this range. So then now you have at least 3 new frequencies introduced for the brain, which are completely artificial. And the question is, to what frequency to tune?
Yeah, and what are the consequences of tuning to?
So we do not really know for now that if this or that switch between the frequency or frequency pooling or mixing of those frequencies, how they actually affect a different function of the body. But we can be very sure that they are sensed by the body, and these are the basic facts of electronics. So it's not actually to prove it. You have to disprove the basic electronics fact to say that this is not existent, because it has to happen. So
yes.
Basically by physics of electromagnetic fields and electronics, and that's the basic fact. So we are now in our environment really changing this tuning of to natural fields. And what I am saying in my presentations, I give also the analogy to jamming of the signal. Okay, if you want to, for example, in the warfare, it's widely used. If you want to jam the signal of your enemy, so actually break the communication of the enemy, you use jammers. These are the special radio devices which put simply frequencies which are very very close to the frequency which you want to jam, and a lot higher. Okay, so then the receiver on the side of receiver cannot recognize the real signal, and this is actually what is going on now. We have so much of those artificial signals that your brain has really very slight chance to tune to this basic Schumann resonance frequency. So it's like we are disconnected from this tuning frequency of the Earth more and more. And this is not enough. We are not only disconnected, but we also introduce to the environment the frequencies which are strange for the brain, new in the environment, not existent in the evolutionary history. So now what we are actually also have an evidence from a lot of researchers, for example, in astronauts, our body is actually trying to somehow, it's in a process of evolution, it's trying to somehow deal with that and make some changes to adapt, okay? And this upregulates the gene expression and trying to find new solutions, right? But it's an evolution, so the solution maybe in this and that particular example may be found, but maybe not. Maybe the organism just dies, okay, or just be severely deregulated. So we never know, and we have just started that in terms of evolution on Earth. Let's say 30 years of wireless signals. It's really very, very short period for the evolution to work. So now we are, I think, experiencing more of the deregulation and degeneration caused by that, and very different ones because of the, let's say, evolution trying to find a solution, something, and we are constantly deregulated, and that is really scary if you see this in details.
It is, and this is such a great explanation, Pavel. I never. It's the first time I think I have a discussion, and I realize that maybe why people feel better in a low EMF environment or in nature might be just because their body is finally able to tune. That's it.
Exactly.
It's fascinating, and
it's. Then it's also this problem, of discussing about the EMF is good or bad, or even you have this is the argument of the other side very, very often heard, that you have the EMF devices which are used, for example, in medicine, okay, for regeneration or something. But they miss the basic fact that if you want to stimulate something by the EMFs, that might be a good thing, but then you have to provide the environment for regeneration. So difference between the short-term exposure and the long-term exposure is quite a huge one. Okay, it's not like you can treat that if the for example some shortwave stimulation for your knee or something, it's causing the knee to regrow. That's the fact, okay, and it's used in medicine. But then you are supposed to go home, lay and relax, and then your body regenerates. It's like it's the basic fact that you need a stimulus, and then you need the phase of relaxation and regrow. Okay, like weightlifting. Okay, you give a big stimulus to your muscles. You even overstimulate them, but then you have to provide a time without the stimulus. Okay, to regenerate. And now we are in the constant electromagnetic radiation. There is no regeneration phase. Okay, we are constantly under it. So it's like trying to treat post-traumatic stress disorder on the battlefield. Okay, you cannot. You have to remove the stress, okay? Just to provide an environment to relax and to build something. And this is actually what are people doing when they are going into the nature and they are reconnected with those fields. They just start to feel better, but now the time of this regeneration is very limited. Okay, so here actually in this point, what I am doing and proposing to all, especially to all people experiencing chronic diseases, is to at least shield the bedroom or just maybe the whole house, but just the bedroom, just for this 8 hours of sleep to provide the environment without those artificial signals, okay? And usually with time, it helps a lot. And actually some other forms of therapies start to work. And they actually didn't work because simply, if you are deregulated, you cannot, if you are detuned from that, even your healing mechanism in your body start to work differently and start or simply not working efficiently. Okay, so the time of regeneration. I'm not only talking about the let's say unhealthy or diseased people, but if you want your best performance mentally or physically, if you are, for example, an athlete or someone else, you can really shorten very much the time of regeneration if you introduce such kind of shielding, for example, for your bedroom, and you can then really rest and relax, being connected to the natural field, but being not disturbed by the artificial fields.
And this is a great point. I think that even in discussions I have, sometimes we're so focused on the details, right? Oh, it's melatonin, it's the glymphatic system, and this and that. Overall, we are electrical. There's signal jamming in the environment. When you remove the signal jamming, it turns out that your brain works better. If the brain works better, every gland in your body works better. Cellular regeneration works better. Mitochondria, everything works better, and healing works better. Everything is kind of common sense here in this discussion, right? But you have to acknowledge that the body is electrical. It's still a fairly new idea that in medicine in mainstream people are surprised. And something I shared in my book, your brain has enough electricity to charge an iPhone in something like 68 hours. So people, oh yes, wow, the brain is electrical. Your heart is electrical. Turns out, well, your nervous system is as many electrical components. Some of them are EMF, some of them are light, some of them are electricity, magnetism. There's like multiple things that are discovered, and even bacteria to bacteria or fungi to fungi communication uses some sort of light and photons emission that now can be detected. Even the heart now produces we know it produces a magnetic field that's detectable up to several feet, 10, 15 feet, I think. It's crazy, but it's true and it's science. So once you acknowledge these things, what we're saying here makes sense, and I think that I appreciate that this is such a high-level conversation. Instead of getting into details, we're just I think it makes me understand better what is happening here. It's just you're filled with jamming, and let's talk about this jamming a little bit in more precision here, because there are different characteristics of the signal that is comprised in a cell phone or a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth that contribute to it being, let's say, a better jammer, let's put it this way, or more disruptive. In science, there's one article that I found that I wasn't really surprised at the results, but I was glad that it was studied. It's by, I think it's Panagopoulos that does so many great things. I think she, a researcher from Greece, that says that signal generators used in studies. So for example, they expose rats to 2.4 gigahertz signal for 15 hours, and then they look at rats, or they kill them and they look look at the organ damage, and they use signal generators, machines that are supposed to emulate a cell phone or emulate a Wi-Fi. So the researchers took many studies, dozens if not hundreds, and they looked at, okay, when they use a signal generator, what are the effects compared to using a real cell phone or a real Wi-Fi? And every time, or most of the times, the Wi-Fi and the cell phones cause more harm than what we think should be the equivalent. So it makes me so the reason behind that is probably how the technology is built, this modulation and everything that isn't necessarily present in a signal generator. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. No, it's a kind of a problem that actually the most of the studies are done by biochemists, medical doctors, something, and they usually do not understand the radio communication correctly. So they just see that, for example, the carrier wave is 2.4 gigahertz. Then they built a simple 2.4 gigahertz generator into the study, and they are studying the response of the organism. And these are not those signals which we are now experiencing in the environment. Actually, the signal which is now the signal from the mobile base station or Wi-Fi router, it's much more complex, and it's modulated on several layers even. Okay, so first thing is this clock signal, which I have been talking about just a few moments ago, but it's only a starting point. Okay, then you have, because those signals are from many mobile devices, they have to compete for the carrier frequency to communicate, because they cannot communicate really, all in the same time. So you have time slots for them. You have different schemes for communication, for managing that. And this is called the level of carrier access. And there's a lot of techniques which changes the signal, actually, and modulates that with other frequencies. Then after that, you put the data, the real data which you want to transmit on top of that, okay? And now that's the data, which is actually, now you have the signal which really depends what you are transmitting. So the signal would be different if you are transmitting movie or you are talking. That's the other thing. And then now with 5G and some of the Wi-Fi technology in recent years, you have spatial beam modulation. So the wave is modulated spatially, polarized in different ways, and modulated spatially by applying the technique which is called MIMO, or spatial MIMO, multiply input output, and it's spatially structured in a way that can be decoded on the other side of the receiver, but it's changing also the how your body is exposed. So we have at least 4 layers of modulating or changing the signals which our body is experiencing and decodes it. Okay, we have a lot of scientific studies done, basically starting with Dr. Andrew Marino. He was working with Dr. Robert Becker, and he proved, I think around 1990 or maybe around 2000, he proved that we sense, that our brain senses those signals. So he registered changes in the pattern of brain waves, even with very tiny signals with EMF. And the response is actually different for different types of those signals. So the studies which are done with simply carrier wave are studies which are saying nothing about what is really going on. And the difference, you can, I put that into the slides which I send you. I think a lot of people should just at least just skip through this document. This is done by the European Academy of Environmental Medicine. It's called EuroPM 2016. It's published on PubMed, so it's widely available. And you have they established, based on the analysis of the different studies on EMF done like 30 years, like the scope was like 30 years of studies, 30 to 40 years of studies. So, and they established so-called biological limits. And if you look at the table, which is for the biological limits for the wireless signals, you can just see that for the basic radio signal with frequency modulation, so this is the signal of the radio which you can hear in your car, and which we were using some time ago, all. The limit for that is actually 1,000 times higher than for Wi-Fi signal, simply because of that. So then you have the radio signal, you have like this is simply a carrier wave. It's modulated, but this modulation is very simple. Okay, and then you have the very advanced modulation, the Wi-Fi. So the thing alone, which is the difference in modulation, causes the biological limit being 10,000 lower, or thousands of times lower. Okay, and with the 5G, we should expect the difference to be 10 or 100 times because of those additional spatial modulation and other things. So we are now in the with the signals which can be very tiny, but which have, I use the term, the tune or deregulation potential, which is very high for the human brain, okay, for the human nervous system.
So let me summarize this, because this is, I think, a lot to unpack for people. I get it, but I think some people will be lost a little bit. But if I summarize what's happening, we talked about the fact that EMFs in nature, our bodies are tuned to these different kind of EMF. So the magnetosphere, that is a static magnetic field that is fairly strong, we're connected to that. The Schumann Resonance, light, and a bunch of other things in our environment tune our body to the environment, and the body works okay without illness, or let's say it works optimally. The electrical system is tuned, okay? When you have a bunch of different signals, that is the electrosmog that we each live in. I'm being exposed right now. Pawel, I hope you're not being too much exposed. You're probably in the countryside, but still, even in the countryside, you would get some radio, you would get some TV. I
have my house shielded.
Well, that's good. So you have it shielded to not have this signal jamming. So it jams your dashboard, your internal dashboard that's trying to tune your brain, your nervous system. Everything is trying to tune, but then it's trying to tune to the wrong signal because of these things that you mentioned as far as electronic engineering rules. And then you have new technologies that not necessarily have a higher power, and this is the thing that a lot of people will argue. Well, a cell phone, 5G for example, will require less power because it's a shorter distance, and they play around with, it's less power, don't worry about it. Well, it's not necessarily power. Power is one type of thing that can impact how jamming the effect is of a certain signal. So let's say I can just make up numbers here. Your cell phone right now emits 100 units of radiation. Maybe with 5G it will be 50 units, and the industry will say, well, it's 2 times as good, right? The radiation has gone down, but then the 50 units of radiation can have a potential of 10,000 times the effect as far as how jamming this signal is to human biology, but no one is studying exactly how, so the industry can get away with it. And even the studies that are published will not necessarily look at these different characteristics. And if you, in the show notes for this episode, in the YouTube comments or description, you'll find the studies that I mentioned. So the fact that, for example, polarization of the signal changes the biological effect. And there's an amazing paper in 2015 that was published on that that I have a hard time understanding, to be quite honest, but it shows that there's an information that we have here and there that shows that a certain signal at the equal strength of signal, one signal can be extremely jamming and the other one not as much. Can you talk about polarization? Is it the shape of the signal? I'm trying to understand it compared.
You can say it's a shape of the signal in the space.
In 3D environment.
Yeah, it's in the shape of the signal in the space, and it's actually connected with how any antenna, so meaning also the human body, how the human body responds to that, because with different kinds of polarization you can get different types of effects. Okay. And even the strength of the signal will be is actually differently received depending on the polarization of the signal. So if the polarization, for example, of the signal is vertical, and the, let's say, antenna is horizontal, then you will get not a lot of the signal. Okay. When you polarize the antenna to the field, then you have the strongest signal. And we do not really now know how those antennas in the human body are polarized to those signals. But even if we know, it doesn't help much, because those signals are now specially modulated, and it's ever-changing modulation. Okay, so we react to that we know for sure, but we don't know in how we react to that actually. And even if we know it's ever-changing, and these schemes of modulation, of spatial modulation, they are built by electronic engineers for efficiency of transmitting data. They do not study that at all about the biological effects. They do not know anything about it. And it's not because they are bad people, but they are engineers. They are paid to build the most efficient technology of transmitting data in our environment, and they do not care really about the biological effects of those signals. And those signals are becoming, and those schemes are becoming more and more complex. They are now, even to understand them, it requires now higher mathematics and skills in that. So I understand that, but it's very difficult for the average person to even go through that. It's really very, very advanced technology for now to transmit data, but it's a lot of things which are now unknown how the organism really will react to that. We have some from those studies. We have some hints that it's probably huge. Okay. But we do not do very much about it. Okay, now the studies are not in that direction. There are just a few studies, if I am tracking them correctly, which are showing, for example, differences between the 3G and 4G modulations. Okay, the effects on rats actually were much stronger with 4G than with 3G, with the same intensity level. I'm saying. Okay? This is simply because this modulation scheme is different.
Yeah, and this is something to keep in mind. People listening to this, if you haven't seen, look in the comments or the description, the NTP study results that were shown where the peer review process has declared this is clear evidence of EMFs being a carcinogen, and that's at exposure levels that are very comparable to the average cell phone user. Not only that, but this is 2G, 3G technology. So if Pawel, you're right, and this early data on 4G signal that's way more modulated, pulsed, and complex, if this is right, it means that 4G is even more of a danger and of a carcinogen. And with 5G, well, in reality, we don't know, but we can argue that it's probably not getting better at all, because the technology and the supercomputing is allowing us to create these modulation patterns that are way more complex that we understand it, and AI and everything that's like it's exponentially more complex. And this is what allows us to put so much data on the same signal, not have call drop-offs, not have data packets lost, and having this HD video stream so fast, and you have your neighbor in a crowd and they do the same, but the videos don't interfere with each other. That's on a engineering standpoint, that's amazing. But on a biological standpoint, it's an incredible jamming of your system.
Exactly.
I want to finish this discussion, Pawel, before we go with the good news, or let's talk about, okay, how could we change technology, and how do you, with all your expertise, do you think we could have, let's just start with this idea. Do you think we could have a Wi-Fi signal that is like a PEMF device that regenerates the human body? Is that an idea that's crazy, or that could be almost not undetectable by the body?
I would say we are not we are at the stage which is now of the science of it. We do not know enough about all those natural signals first. To really be sure how to really construct the devices which can help with that. But what we can do actually, and this is a project which I am working on in my free time, which is really non-existent. But I am trying. It's actually to introduce kind of a signal regenerator with of the Schumann resonance. So imagine that you shield your house, for example, from the incoming radiation, but then also at the same time you have an antenna outside the house which is taking the Schumann resonance signal, very tiny, regenerates that. So we now have to extract the signal from all that noise. Okay, It's very, very difficult. Our body is constantly trying to do that, and it's amazing that it's really amazing that it still somehow tunes to that Schumann resonance in that noise. Because technically, for example, I work for the military, for electromagnetic protection of sensitive information, and I know that you can extract from noise, you can extract the signal. If you know what the signal is, the certain characteristic of the signal, you can extract it even if the noise is 100 times higher than the signal. This is, for example, for the human voice. Okay, the extraction. So from a very long distance, using different techniques, you can really restore that signal. So what I am trying to do is actually to design a device which can really extract the Schumann resonance and rebuild it with the natural power inside the shielded environment. Okay, this is one thing which we can try to do. We probably, if we know a lot about this Schumann resonance signal, we can probably at least try to build the Wi-Fi signal around it. Okay, just to show. But that's not that easy, because the brainwave pattern is not only the fixed frequency. It changes, it regulates itself. It's a self-regulating system. You respond to the influences from the environment, to your psychological states, to a lot of things. So if you want to build a signal which is really in tune with your particular situation, in that scenario, I would say it's quite impossible.
Yeah, or it's so complex that we don't have.
From my view, maybe I am not very optimistic here, but from my point of view, we should change. We should focus not on a solution how to build a safer Wi-Fi. We should focus on a solution how to transmit this data signal in a way different than Wi-Fi, different than wireless technology, not disturbing our body and our organism. Even with the Li-Fi, which is now being, let's say, probably close to introduction, when you have actually the transmitter in your light bulb on the ceiling, and then you can use the Li-Fi, so the wireless communication over the visible light. Even with that, probably our skin will react to that also unpredictably. But the good thing about the Li-Fi is that the light is easily blocked by your clothes, by all those things in the house. So at least those people who want to use it, they can use it at house and at home, and not actually radiate to the other people, right?
Yeah, that's
so
a good point.
that is why I am a proponent of this, because then you have a choice for your environment. Now you have no choice.
Yeah.
You are simply 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days in a year. You are constantly exposed. It's not only about your cell phone usage, because that's not that important. The important is the environmental exposition, so all the time exposition. So I would say we just forgot about how good the fiber optic is, and why do not have fiber optics in all benches in the park when you can connect your smartphone? Why not? It's cheap.
Yeah.
You have better true output. You have much lower. Actually, transmitting the data signals through air is the worst possible energetic thing to do. It requires a lot of energy, like billions of times more than in fiber optics. And we are doing that because if you want to reach, for example, 2 times the distance, you have to put 4 times the power into the mobile station. So we are putting now really huge amounts of power into the environment, really to have those wireless devices. And I'm asking a question, just just for convenience of being on the move, to have that, if it's really a wise strategy, knowing what we are doing. Okay, maybe for some local environments, you can probably have a fiber optic to your house, and then use the Li-Fi, and then you do not radiate it outside. So if you decide for yourself that you want to use it, okay, you can use it, okay, and take the consequences. If it's your decision, your choice. But to radiate all those people, all the society with that much of power, and not giving them any choice to, it doesn't matter if you use a mobile phone or not, if you have a mobile phone or not now. It doesn't really matter. It's just this ongoing radiation in the environment. So for me, we should go with the fiber optic again. You can install fiber optic with any electrical cables, and it can be installed in any house, in any part of the city. Like I say, you can install it with the electric lines in every park, to every bench, to every cafeteria or something. And the fiber optic connection is not, the cable is flexible, it's very tiny. You can just connect to your smartphone and use it. Okay, it's just like that. Okay, there is a little problem how to do it in your car, but then we can ask ourselves if this is really so very important, and if it's important for everybody to talk all the time in the car, okay? Which is causing another problem with your focus as a driver, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then we can try to find other means of communication, and at least, if somebody wants to use it, the wireless communication in somehow should be responsible for exposing not only himself, but also other people. Okay, because it's like that, and it goes even farther. Most people do not know that now this protocols for communication between mobile devices and the base station are very much advanced, and they actually produce more power and giving you more bandwidth depending on what you need. So it means if you have a friend just nearby you, watching the full HD movie on the iPhone, actually the base station is radiating much more in your direction than without it. So he is actually responsible for radiating you with a lot more complex signal and with a lot more power to your direction from the mobile base station.
Is that with 4G? Is that right now in
place?
place?
It's right now in 4G, and it will be even more advanced in 5G.
Wow, I didn't know that it was with 4G. So that there's an argument, and you know, Pawel, I gotta admit, sometimes I rarely use my cell phone, but sometimes I get impatient. I'm doing something, and I open it just to check something, and I realize that most of the times that I use it, it's completely useless. I could wait on my computer in 5 minutes. It's just a bad habit, you know. So I think it's also a matter of user habit. I think everyone's been binging on technology since the iPhone came out in 2007, and it's time that we come back to just having dinner and turning off the cell phone, going on the road, focusing on the road instead of killing a pedestrian because you're trying to text something like LOL or something. Sometimes our use of technology is so abusive and so useless that it should, if we do have wireless communications and we realize there's a trade-off for our health, it should be in for emergencies, for something that really adds to your life and not just a distraction. We see pedestrians walking and then hurting themselves or falling in a subway station trap or getting hit by a car. People are getting so distracted. It's always on the device. So there's even other problems. Even if the technology were safe, tomorrow morning, all the EMFs are now super healthy, people will still be depressed and anxious and a little bit all over the place because of how much they use it and the distractibility, and there are other issues at hand here. So I agree with you that it's not just a matter of making the signal better. I think that fiber optics, in all coffee shops, there's simply no reason to have Wi-Fi. You should have workstations with 1,000 different plugs. In classrooms, for children, same thing. In work environments, there should be plugs everywhere. It's easy. It's not very costly. It's super stable. So just these environments alone would change tremendously how much the population is exposed. So I think that these are real solutions where we can cut down on the wireless use. And I appreciate that you're remembering, you're kind of reminding me of this fiber optic that really needs to be taken more seriously as a solution to reduce the wireless use and our dependency on wireless.
And now also from the privacy of the information point of view, is much safer and private, and you cannot just simply to some systems and spy on someone or something else. It's much safer on over the fiber optics. So this is also the reason I work, for example, for financial institutions. In most of the financial institutions, it's in the code. No wireless, no printer wireless, no anything. It's just cables. Simply because of that. Okay, it's too easy to get the data from the wireless network. So this is actually a funny example how it works. In advantage for the financial institution workers. Okay, it's that they have a low EMF environment. But it's also only about the Wi-Fi connection. It doesn't change us anything about the people's smartphones and all that communication. But just for the Wi-Fi networks in the financial institutions, this is simply forbidden for most of the institutions. But also taking this aspect of telecommunication, it's much safer. For the privacy, for privacy reasons, and it's really fiber optic is cheap, and I would say from my perspective, what I know, and I studied the subject very detailed, also from the engineering point of view. My position now is that any safe technology transmitting the data signals, as we know the data signals now, has to be contained, to be safe. Okay, cannot really radiate, not in any part of EMF spectrum. It's like no light, no changing of light signal, no changing of electromagnetic spectrum. Now, most people do not realize, because it was the notion that we have, this whole electromagnetic spectrum, and then there was naturally nothing in the part of the spectrum, and we put this wireless communication in it. Like it was really nothing in the 2.4 gigahertz in nature. Okay, so we think it's safe, but you should remember that space between the signals in the spectrum of signals and space between the signals is like in music. Where is no music, it's pause, and pause also plays. In terms of signal theory, pause is a signal. So no signal at the certain area of the spectrum means something also in terms of signal theory. It's not like if it's a variable, we can do anything with it, okay? It's not like that. If you apply, and this is what I'm trying to do, I am applying to my knowledge in let's say, quantum biology and everything what I now know and have studied in that. I apply to that the things from electronics, from signal theory, from field theory, for electromagnetic field theory, and theory of control, okay, of control automatics, really, okay. And if you are thinking in this way, this is quite a different dimension. You have energy dimension, which is one, and you have different dimension of information. And even if you take the famous Einstein equation, E equals mc squared, it's an energy equation. It doesn't say anything about what this light, which is C, is telling by the ways of information. Okay, so this is a different dimension, and we are just having the limits for radiating people in terms of energy, but we are not looking into the signal. Okay, we are not looking into that dimension, and we are missing quite a lot, turns out.
Well, thank you.
We are just trying, how those. And a lot of people are fighting, electro-hypersensitive people, and a lot of groups which I was part of also, and they are fighting for the lowering the levels for the society and something. And it's good in a sense, but it doesn't take this very important factor into account. And it's, even if we lower that now, like 100 times or even 10,000 times, it will not be enough with 5G technology. It will not be enough to compensate for those changes introduced by the different schemes of modulation and that. Okay, so it's like that. If we want safe technology, it has to be contained. It has to be inside the cable, inside the better shielded cable, or the best fiber optics. And we have already for many years this technology. So the question is, why we are not using it? Okay, you have to lay the fiber optic in the ground, but then you lay the cable with multi-fiber cable, and you can connect. Now, there is no wireless technology between America and Europe. There are fiber optics under the ocean, okay, because they are much more reliable, and the throughput of data is much higher. And so we are not trying to do it wirelessly. Wireless has only one strong point, but this is convenience.
Yeah.
Convenience for clients, okay? But the question is if we are ready really to put our health on that convenience.
Yeah, these are perfect closing thoughts, Pawel. Thanks so much for your insights. It's been just such an eye-opening interview for me, and I'm sure people listening to this will appreciate this. This is one of the best conversations I've heard personally, and I look at those. I'm looking for these conversations about safer technologies, and I think it explains in such a different way how disruptive the signals are, but not just because of the power. And the power argument, I know the industry will play this card. I know a lot of people would think that lower power is higher safety. It's not as simple. Unfortunately, I wish it were. I wish it were, but this is a proof that it's not.
No,
And
it's not.
just to close, where can people find you? Do you have a website they can follow? Because it looks like there's
It's
a ton
like,
of projects you're working on.
Yeah, most of what I've published is in Polish, so
Okay.
it's not really for the bigger audience. But I am now in the process. I have established a Patreon blog, but just after my journey to United States. So it will be on Patreon blog in a few months. I think it will be some articles which are going really deeper into that and trying to show different aspects of that, and also proposing some practical solutions, what you can really do for now to limit your exposure and to make your health better.
Sounds great. Well, once you have that link, we'll make sure to update the description with it so that people can check out your work. And if they're interested, for sure, try to donate to your Patreon, because I think you have unique insights. And I would love to see you do more of that and participate in safer technologies. And we'll definitely stay in touch, because it's been so amazing. I would love to have you on again in the future when you have new insights, and maybe talk about the device you want to create. This is something completely unique that I've never heard such an idea, that taking the Schumann resonance and retuning and resending that inside the shielded environment, it's genius, to be honest. If you can achieve that with the help of others, I think you would see incredible results. I think it makes sense.
I think it's quite possible and close. Of course, it's a question of time for development, but also as a side note, I would like to also tell that having all my knowledge and experience in that, I am also able to generate those different signals, because I know how they are constructed, and I have also devices for that. So if there is any project for studies which are trying to find the differences between the different forms of signals and so on, I can be a part of it. So designing the study equipment or something. So if you heard about someone looking for that, I would be very interested to be a part of that, because honestly, the study I've read are very weak on that side.
Perfect. Well, surely if you're listening to this, you have contacts with researchers looking for an engineer that could understand the differences between these signals. And for sure, in the future, once the course sells more, the book sells more, if our company gets more money, we want to invest in new research the best we can, and invest money in researchers that are looking in things like that. If we can prove that the 5G signal at way lower strength is way more harmful, it would be extremely controversial, and for sure the industry wouldn't like that. But at least we'll get the whole story. We'll show people and regulators and politicians and people, look, the signals went down in strength, but now we're seeing more effects, and this is going to match what people are going to experience, because I think they will get more symptoms, unfortunately, and they will wonder how, because on the meter it says it's low, right? But your body doesn't understand what you're trying to do. Your body will detect the jamming is super high, and it will become even more critical, as you mentioned, Pawel, to connect back with nature.
It goes even farther with measuring those signals, because they have the very high peaks but very short time. Okay, those signals, and a lot of meters people buy now to measure something just cannot take it in a time fashion, so they are just ignoring those signals. Now, if you do not know that there are signals of certain characteristics which are very short pulses, then you measure, you think everything is fine, but actually your meter is deficient in those terms of signals. So they are reported much lower, or they are not existent on the meter. And one of the most, let's say, deregulating signal usually missed by this, let's say consumer meters, it's actually radar. Radar is the most deregulating signal. It's a non-stationary source, at least because it's stirring. Okay, so you have spatial modulation, and it's really, from my experience, it's the most dangerous thing in it. So areas around airports, areas around the military bases where military radars are around, something are no for anybody. So I have clients, I work with hypersensitive people, but I have also clients which collapsed with the LAS like 6 months after entering the house near the airport. Okay, like 36 years old lady. Okay, now on the wheelchair. Wow. And I'm telling them, if they do not move away from that, and it was their dream house. They built it, and she was actually supervising the construction of it, and her husband was out, earning money and something. And then, after just 6 months after entering this house, after moving into the house, she started to have some problems with the nervous connection with her legs and something. And then, in just a few months, she was in the wheelchair. Yeah, it's radars are simply the worst. I would say worse than 5G.
And this would not be something you would see on most meters, right? Because
but there are some which are really good in it, but you have to know how to measure those type of signals, and even the governmental agencies have problem with that. They do not know how to measure it correctly. There are some legal limits, but those limits actually are related to the mean value. So it's like you have one impulse each 10 seconds or something like that, and then it's measured over the whole time. So it says you actually nothing about the signal characteristic of it and the regulation. So I think it's I can continue for hours and hours like you about the subject, but we have to focus a little bit, and I think I will be able to explain more of that on Patreon blog. So
perfect. Sounds great. Well, I'm looking forward to your Patreon blog. I'll be a contributor for sure, reading your stuff, because this is cutting edge, and you offer deep understanding that needs to be shared, especially among electrical engineers and biologists who want to understand the electrical engineer standpoint. Everyone needs to work together hand in hand to try to understand the problem, and I find that a lot of times professionals don't talk to each other. One thing I want to say is that if you're freaking out right now, like, oh, I live near an airport or a military base, and Pawel told me it's a big problem, hire a building biologist or a geovital consultant. There will be links in the description, and tell them before the inspection, I live near an airport, can you help? Or I live near a military base, like, do you have the apparatus to detect if the radar is actually affecting me in my house? Because these are sometimes thousands of dollars worth instruments that you will not want to rent or purchase yourself, and that are very hard to also understand how they work.
To operate this instrument, it's a quite high knowledge required.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really not a point for a private person to buy such a meter, because it's really, you have to understand a lot about electromagnetic signal to really operate it. So it's very complex, and it's very difficult to explain it in a simple way for everybody to understand. Like for quantum physics, you really cannot do it very simply.
Yeah,
there is a certain base of knowledge required, but Also, on the other end, if you hire such a building biologist with the right equipment, just like you said, tell that you have radar nearby or harbor base or something, and you want to check this. And on the other hand, that there are solutions to that. Okay, if you find yourself in a situation when you have the radar nearby, you still can implement effective shielding solutions to really lower that signal to the levels which will not harm you as much. Okay, and then you buy time for maybe thinking about the move or some other place or something. But at least you are in a much better environment for that, and then you can really decide. You can earn some money. You can decide on the process of moving, because it's really a big change. So you cannot do it in a moment. Okay, and so there are shielding strategies. Materials are available. It's not an impossible task to do. Just requires some time and effort to do it correctly. Okay.
I totally agree. Thanks for sharing that, Pavel. And if people have questions in the comments, I can comment a little bit about shielding. But most of all, it's hiring a professional that really matters. That people with experience, that have the right meters, and that can help you shield your environment. Don't try to do a quick job with tinfoil or something unprecise. It's just not worth it. Yeah,
usually this does not work.
Exactly. Pavel, thanks so much for being here today. It's been so incredible, and I'm sure people will get a ton of value from this interview. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.